Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my best Leaguestart test yet, this time with Pyroclast Saboteur. This build, for starters, did the Exarch and Eater. It was like 848 when I'd killed my final fight, which was Exarch, I believe, or Eater, I can't remember. And we died roughly around 13 times for context during the course of leveling this character. This build, I was very impressed with for a few reasons. Number one, we can run any map modifier we want. One of the map modifiers that usually stumps a lot of builds is Reflect. Mines get around that because mines are considered to be the thing dealing the damage, not you. So the damage is reflected against the mine, but this doesn't stop you from dealing damage at all. It is purely a non-modifier if you run into Reflect. That being said, I think I killed myself either 1 or 2 times to Ellie Reflect because I leveled up my Frostblink and it did enough damage where I could reflect into a pack and one-shot myself. This isn't a big deal. All you need to do is just not level up Frostblink. I ended up going back and buying like a level 1 Frostblink, leveled it up a couple times on accident, but from that point onward, I ran Reflect maps, didn't have an issue again with it. And the levels of Frostblink don't really help that much in terms of how good the skill is. It's pretty similar when it's level 1 to when it's level 20, so it's not really that much of a downside, and especially it's worth it when running a Reflect map. Even if you have a leveled Frostblink, you can still run a Reflect map. You just have to do it a little bit more carefully, a little bit more slowly, so to speak. On top of that, if you get something like a no regen map, this build can also run that. I don't need to put on a mana flask to sustain. I am an Eldritch Battery build, which means I can sustain regardless of no mana regen. I lose my life regen, but I have a couple life flasks, and it's pretty easy to pop those throughout the map when I get taken damage. So it's not a big issue either for that map mod. So there's a lot of map mods that are hard counters for builds, but this one can get around all of them. I can run the map unID'd, and that's what I'm going to showcase is a tropical map unID'd. Now, talking about the build a bit, Pyroclast is a mine skill. We get, essentially, we throw down these mines, and whenever they blow up, they release these fiery projectiles that blow up in an area. They can kind of shotgun a boss. They're not all going to hit the same target, but if you're placing the mines efficiently underneath the target and you ramp up your mines, you're going to get a lot of shotgunning hits all on top of where that boss is standing, because the way this skill works is it gives you an additional projectile on it per previous mine in the sequence. So if you activate the sequence, you start chucking more mines down, eventually by the end of the sequence, you're going to have something that's shooting a lot more projectiles than the base 2 additional it starts out with. It's going to shoot maybe plus 10 or plus 15, whatever amount of chains you get in the sequence it goes up to. Not only that, but if you have a bunch of mines sitting next to an enemy, this also has a very strong aura effect, which makes you deal a lot of additional flat damage. So it ends up hitting pretty hard with that, which combines nicely with the Saboteur. Now, as far as this build goes, another thing I'd like to highlight is its very low socket pressure. You'll notice on my gear, I have 1 curse, I have a movement skill with 1 support on it, and then I have my 2 auras, and then I have my main damage support. I have 4, 6, 10 sockets, 11 sockets, 12 sockets I am not using. That's not because I can't use them, that's because the build functions well enough without it. I didn't bother to take the time setting up extra sockets and extra gear because 1, I'm a little bit lazy, and 2, I didn't want to spend the time. Now granted, if I do this as a Leaguestart build, which I think I'll probably make a Leaguestart build guide on this because how impressed I was with it, I will give you basically my recommendations and I'll fine tune other stuff that can fit in those sockets. But the good news is the build functions with very low socket pressure in terms of if you just have this stuff set up, you can run T16s fine, and that feels pretty good. It also gives you some freedom to maybe go for different gearing. Like if you wanted to go for a higher HP build, if you could fit in the strength, you can go for a comms very easily in this character because quite frankly, you don't need the sockets. Outside of all of that, the other advantages of this character is its very, very high damage. The highlight of this character was ever since I got the setup for Pyroclast Mine, I could equip it at level 28. By level 31, I had charged mines. I had my 4-link setup. I was basically insta-phasing Dominus, and I never stopped insta-phasing. I went all the way to T16s, and I was killing the bosses in less than a few seconds. Even the example of Infinite Hunger, the guy that's before Eater, that's usually a very chunky boss. Normally you have to do a couple phases, most builds do. I was able to kill him without even going into the mud phase with a character on this level of gear. I think that's quite good for damage, and in fact, I think that's very hard to beat in terms of damage. It's that good. That being said, as for our early damage, we got to March of the Legion. These boots are great for a Leaguestart scenario. on a mine character because they come with a bunch of plus aura gems. So basically this ends up being a pseudo 5-link sort of item when you have it rolls from 3 to 5. I have a 4 roll here. Initially when I dropped it, it had 3 aura gems. I threw a divine at it, it went to 3 aura gems, and then I dropped another divine throughout the run, which normally you would never use a divine on this. These boots are very common. You're going to be able to buy them on trade from anywhere from, I would think, a few chaos for a +3 one to maybe 20-30 C for a max roll one, and they will treat you all the way through. Probably I think I'd be doing Uber Elder, honestly, with just these boots, and with this +4 I'm pretty sure I could do Uber Elder on this build. That being said, by the time I got to Uber Elder, I'd have a bit more levels, I'd have a bit more damage scaling, maybe a bit more defenses, yada yada yada, whatever it is. Point is, these item allows you to have very low gear investment and have close to 6-link damage, just because, hey, it gives you movement speed, it gives you all res, and then it has +5 levels on top of it. Works great for a miner. And that's another thing I want to state about miner builds. When your skill is specifically a mine skill, it always has the aura tag, and plus levels to auras is not really respected on the trade economy as a plus level chest piece. So say you have something that says +2 projectile dems and +2 auras, most builds are going to, or most people are going to try to sell that based on the +2 projectile. But for Pyroclast, that is a +4 item. So for example, you could find a lot of powerful items with that sort of setup. Not only that, there's a chest piece called Victorio's Influence, which I think has plus aura gems on the base of it. That chest piece, I think you could probably find with some plus levels on it for Pyroclast. Stuff like that would allow you to go really high-end damage pretty early without too much investment, I believe. So, that's the idea behind the character. Our defensive layers are essentially getting evasion and suppress. Saboteur comes with blind. Blind is a great multiplier for how many times you evade attacks. And not only that, it comes with DR. Saboteur gives you 15% DR on enemies. I combine that with the Sabo Mastery for 2% reduced damage dealt to enemies near up to 10%. That means basically enemies, if you've thrown down 5 mines, they will reduce their damage by 10%. Effectively, we have about 25% DR between those two things. We have good, well, not good, just basically decent evasion. If you get better evasion gear, it becomes great evasion, to be honest. And we have close to suppress cap. Right now, we're sitting at 99. That's because we're at full life. Really, we're normally at 89, and we have Lucky Suppress, which is effectively basically suppress cap. It's a little bit under, but for all intents and purposes on a softcore build, it will feel amazing. That being said, we don't have cap gold res, we don't have cap chaos res. That is more of a gearing issue. Just go through and look at my gear. My gear is not good. That should be needless enough. That should be easy enough for you to determine. I am not lying when I say I have bad gear. Just look at it. It's in the POB if you're curious. I don't even have an anoint. And anyways, let's go ahead and get in a showcase. I'll showcase this red map, unidentified. I am not afraid of the fact this is unidentified, because I know I've ran every single map. I've had no issue with any single mod I ran into. The only sort of awkward one was Ellie Reflect when I killed myself with Frostblink, de-leveled the Frostblink, no issue now. And then if it's a no regen flask or a no regen map, I have to be a little bit more careful about oh, what's the word? I'm a little bit more careful about using my life flask or paying attention to my HP pool. All that being said, as far as Pyroclast mine is concerned, there is a ring called Astral Projector. And when I was going into this test, people were telling me, no, you can't do a Pyroclast mine starter without Astral Projector. It's mandatory. It simply just isn't true. This skill, if you're just aiming, you're still doing plenty of damage. It's not like overly impossible to play. That being said, you get to look forward to a massive upgrade in not only DPS, because your mines start to target enemies appropriately, but also quality of life, because you don't actually have to aim anymore and they will just auto aim for you, so to speak. For example, normally you'll see whenever I'm like fighting enemies, I'm throwing them directly under where they are. Astral Projector makes the Pyroclast blow up underneath the enemies, even if the mines aren't there appropriately positioned. Sometimes I'm trying to like do a chain and I forget to actually press the button that triggers the chain. So if you wonder why I'm throwing mines and stuff isn't occurring, sometimes I forget to detonate. The thing about mine characters is I like to play them detonate on left click, which means I can constantly move around, throw mines, and they will auto detonate and everything works great. The downside of doing this is Pyroclast is specifically a skill that benefits heavily from a detonation sequence. That being said, if I want to play on left click, I'm not going to synergize with a detonation sequence. But you can kind of do both, and that's what I've done here. The idea was simple. I had detonate on left click, and normally I'm just running around mapping, detonating on left click, it works fine, it kills a pack, I move on. But when you get to a boss, when you want the chain sequence, when you want that sequence of damage, it is simple to just have my character just standing somewhere, throwing the mines. I press T, and I start the detonation sequence, and you'll see, boom, we get a massive detonation sequence, and you don't really have to dodge too much in a boss fight. You have to frost blink every now and then, you have to shield charge every now and then, and sometimes you have to do your left click to reposition. That's fine if you sometimes botch a detonation sequence every now and then. Most of the time, you're going to get full advantage of the damage, so to speak. Like on this guy, I set up my mines, I'm going to do the detonation sequence, he's not hitting me because I have good evasion, and for the most part, he's not going to deal enough physical damage to kill a 3700 life build with just one hit. Eventually, when I get better evasion, I'd like to go Wind Dancer probably on this character, but my evasion isn't quite there. But you can see, we have the damage reduction from the nearby enemies with the mine thing, we have the damage reduction from Saboteur, we have decent evasion, we have Suppress. A lot of times, it all feels pretty good, and then we have the regen on top of that from Saboteur. I like this Ascendancy a lot. For a mine-based character, it's such a shame that Saboteur kind of got wrecked when it came to traps. But outside of that, for mine characters, it's looking pretty good. And I've enjoyed this experience immensely. It did exceeded my expectation. I always have thought of mine characters as quite good on League starts, but man, doing this run, it felt good. Running every single map mod, not carrying, always having good damage. Every time I got to a boss fight, getting to load up the mines and get the detonation sequence going for that just nice little burst of just so many projectiles and just phasing the boss. It just feels good. So yeah, I can highly recommend this build. I think I will probably make a build guide on it. I am specifically doing these tests just to get a feel for certain builds I think would be good. And then once we get real information like patch notes, like here's the Ascendancy changes, all that sorts of stuff, I am going to adjust based on that. If this build goes through completely unscathed, still a good build, I will probably make a build guide on it for Leaguestart. And, or if it has some changes, I'll adapt it, stuff like that. That's my plan going forward. There's a lot of builds I'd want to make some Leaguestart guides on. Pyroclast has impressed me. I will recommend it. It's one of those things where if you can enjoy the mine playstyle, if you're cool with it, I think it's quite strong and have enjoyed my experience with it so far. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at Pyroclast Mine Saboteur on a Leaguestart. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching. Take care, Exiles, and peace out.